Welcome to Interruptions Part 2. Last week we looked at Luke chapter 8, and Jesus healing a demon-possessed man. He'd been that way for an incredibly long time. And then the story ends with that Jesus interrupts some other people's lives by casting the demons into pigs, and the onlookers are not too happy about that. So a question I asked you rhetorically is, what do you do with interruptions? What do you do with interruptions when people around you interrupt you? God forbid. But how about if Jesus himself, what if God himself interrupts you? How will you deal with that? Today, the script flips just a little bit. And this is one of my favorite passages of scripture. I know, I say it a lot. But I'm going to level with you. I would venture to say this is top 10 for me. There are so many different layers to this passage of scripture. It's a long one. There's so many different layers, and the main thing that is just mind-blowing to me is this: that Jesus embraces an interruption that interrupts another interruption. It's so good. And Jesus just brings this incredible compassion and clarity. He shows he's consistent with mission. The care and the concern of Jesus demonstrated in this passage is just marvelous. It's one of those moments that I just really wish that I could just give it to people and say, just hang on to this passage of scripture. If you're having a bad day, just hang on to this passage of scripture. If you're not yet a believer, just check it out. I don't want you to just fall in love with Jesus, because he shows in this passage he's already made the first move to love us and to love us well. So let's dive in together, shall we? Luke chapter 8, beginning with verse 40. Now when Jesus returned, now I'm going to pause already after 4 words. Now when Jesus returned, I don't know if you remember this, the people, after he heals the demon-possessed man, they ask him to depart. There's such great fear that has seized them. They don't know what to do with the fact that Jesus has healed him. They don't know what to do with the fact that the way that Jesus heals him, by the demons going from the man into the pigs, and the pigs go into the right off a cliff, just done. They just drown, just done. They don't know what to do with that. And so then Jesus comes back to that area, back to that region. The crowd welcomed him, for they're waiting for him, which is a little bit loaded in that at this point, the crowd's not always incredibly for him. And that last passage hints at that. Not everybody is for him. Some out of curiosity, some to have a culture of gotcha. Some are part of really a core, and then they're there as part of the crowd as well. Some are his disciples. Some are previous recipients of miracles. You run the gamut of the why the crowd is there. But they're waiting for him. And he comes back to that area. Either he left entirely and there's an interruption of the flow and then comes back, or more than likely he went to the other side for a little bit, regroups, and stayed in the region, and then comes right back to the other side of the water. Make sense? Verse 41. There came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. Don't lose sight of who he was. A ruler of the synagogue. I want you to think through, I'll lead you there for a moment, the humility that one who has great position, title, and responsibility, that this one comes to ask Jesus for help. Come on, don't let that be lost on you tonight. Falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house. For he had an only daughter. Now watch how old she is. About 12 years old. She was dying. I have a 12-year-old. Can't comprehend this. As Jesus went, the people pressed in around him. Verse 43. So that's one part of the story. Verse 43. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. Do you get that? It's 12 years. 12-year-old, 12 years. I hadn't noticed this before. I was doing research, and there's a great website entitled Got Questions. Just great website. I love it. It's Christian-based. Highly recommend it. Just great writing, very deep, insightful helps for us. And they pinpointed the idea of this, that the woman had the issue of blood for 12 years, and the girl is 12 years old. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she's desperate, she's out of options. Couldn't be healed by anyone. Think about it, the limitations of medicine during that time, right? She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. Come on, think about this. He didn't touch her. He didn't reach out to her. He's on his way to another miracle, embraces the interruption, and she reaches out to him. Oh, the beauty in this passage. Who was it that touched me? When all denied it, Peter said, Master, the crowds are surrounding you, pressing in on you. How would you know? Jesus said, someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me. Come on, I need you to think about this incredible, divine collision of presence and power at work within Jesus, of a command and of compassion, of a reach and a response. All this taking place while Jesus is on his way to another miracle. Come on, can I just pause here for a moment on this? I just thought of this just now. I want you to think about the times when you go to him, when you pray, that you are not interrupting him. He can handle when you're interrupting him. If we all called on him at the exact same time, we don't get a fragmented, fractured, fractal of who he is. We get the entirety of who he is, regardless of when, regardless of the desperation, regardless of the need, regardless of what else is going on. You have the fullness of Jesus at your disposal, the fullness of his hand, the fullness of his heart over your life. Come on, somebody needs to receive that tonight. To perceive that his power has gone out. This collision of presence and power. Verse 47. When the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling. Come on, and think about this. She's just like a leper. A woman with an issue of blood was supposed to be cast to the side. She is ceremonially unclean. She falls down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had immediately been healed. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. I want you this as well. There was a 12-year-old daughter, never referenced as a daughter by Jesus, but this woman who had the 12 years of the issue of blood, Jesus calls her daughter, the tenderness of Jesus. Verse 49. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. Now lean in on this with me. They only call him teacher. They don't call him miracle worker. They don't call him healer. They don't call him Messiah. They don't refer to him as the Son of God, as teacher. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, do not fear, only believe, and she will be well. God will honor your reach. If God honored the woman that already reached the hem of Jesus' garment, then surely you sending for me, God will honor. This is really what Jesus is saying here. If you came all this way, if the woman came with the issue, and she was honored for her faith, then surely will I not honor your faith. Verse 51, so when he comes to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him. Now watch who's there. Peter, James, and John. And the father and the mother of the child, and all who were weeping and mourning for her, who were either friends or family, or in many respects, they're people that are paid in some way, invited in some way to give respect, to give honor there. That's the crowd. It's an intimate group that's there, basically bedside. Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping. All the audacity of Jesus to say this. Come on. If somebody were to walk into that type of a setting for you, it would seem really crude and crass. It's more audacious than it is compassionate. They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. Think about who might have been laughing. Could have been one of the three disciples, mother, father, or those that are weeping and mourning. Somebody there, a group of people there, are laughing at the notion that Jesus is referring to her as asleep when she, by all evidence, would be dead. Come on, Jesus has done an incredible amount of miracles up to this point, and yet there's not enough belief within them. Now, Jairus viewed it differently. because he had sent for Jesus in the first place. Think about this. Taking her by the hand, he called, "Child, arise." Verse 55, and her spirit returned. She got up at once, and he directed that something should be given to her to eat. Her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened, which is incredible. I don't know if you remember, in the last section of the text regarding Jesus healing the demon-possessed man, that man wants to go along with Jesus, and he says, no, stay there. You need to tell anyone that will listen what God has done in your life. Don't forget and remind the other people that Jesus visited here, and your life will never be the same. That when Jesus interrupts, there is greatness, there is goodness, and there is glory. Here it's different. He charged them not to tell what had happened. In fact, Scripture says that they are so amazed, they are so astonished, they are floored, is the way we would say it in the vernacular now, in the English language. But why tell no one? Why tell no one? Because at this point, there's a shift that's taking place with Jesus. Remember in the beginning, the crowds that are pressing in. And some of these miracles were not for the masses. Think about how specific, intimate, and individual these were. In the passage where Jesus heals the demon-possessed man, yes, it was about that man, but it was more so exposing the reaction of the crowd, of the group of people that were there. Here it's different. There's a more intimate aspect. And here, I believe Jesus is trying to get our attention. That no matter if it's one person, one need, one moment, the compassion of Jesus is not for the masses. Messiah is not just for the masses. Messiah is for the one. His healing is for the one. His reach is for the one. His receptivity from a reach is for the one. And I want you to know today that he embraces every interruption from you. You're not just part of a tapestry and then there's only value because you're part of a tapestry. But your part that's woven into the tapestry is vitally important. You have value. You have worth. And Jesus, in contrasting these two different moments of interruptions, is contrasting the idea of worth and of value. And he redefines it for that culture. And I believe he's still doing that today. He's redefining what the value of one life is. And I fear we have misprioritized what the value of one life is. We value property over people, projects over people, possessions over people, power over people. You get the idea. Jesus cuts through all of that. He interrupts it and reminds of the value of one. And so in one story, he wants the one man to stay in his place, stay in his village, to keep perpetuating. I want you to know that you have value, even though everybody else around didn't think so. I value you, and I want you to always remember it. This is the way it used to be. You were bound, and now you're free. In this passage, he just wants them to simply treasure it. The one with the issue of blood, now you can re-engage with society. You have your life back. Then we remember the tenderness of this moment. That when you interrupted, I reciprocated. Jairus' daughter, the trek back to the house. En route, she dies. But no. It's temporary. He raises her back to life again. It's a precursor of his own resurrection. But it's a reminder of the value that you have, the worth that you have. I'm trying to stare you down tonight so that you'll believe it, you'll receive it. That when Jesus comes to interrupt, sometimes it's to correct. And sometimes it's to bring his compassion. But regardless, will you let him interrupt? Will you not be so scattered that you'll miss him? Will you not be so driven that you'll chase him away? Will you embrace the interruptions? Because he might put you back on mission, back on course, and fan the flame of your very worth and value. For you were made in his very image, as you are, as one person, as one child of God. Go live as such. Thank you for tuning in tonight. May God richly bless you in each and every way. watch for his interruptions and embrace them to the glory of God and to the furthering of the story. Ciao.